So today we'll be joining, you'll be joining us, myself, Judy Matotia. I will be co-facilitating with Jennifer Tafayono, the Executive Director of the American Samoa Alliance. Would you like to say hello, Jennifer?
Talofa, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon.
Yes, we wanted to we find the importance of bringing this workshop when domestic violence comes to the workplace. This is one of the prevalent issues here in the territory, because most of, as well as anywhere else in the world, I believe, because many of our victims are employed one way or the other, are employed or do work at an office or have to leave home to join their workplace, or to be in the office, or and do not work from home. So someone else is their boss. So this is a very important webinar that we thought would benefit the workplaces, the employers, the organizations, the different agencies that employ a big number or a great number of staff members or employees, and something to look at what happens when our employees come in, or our co-workers come in, other staff members come to work, and they're affected they're affected by violence.
So I just wanted to add on to that, Judy. Good morning again, and I'm grateful for the presence in this space, as well as sharing to be done over this webinar. Like you said, this topic is important. It's really important because domestic violence, it walks in the doors of all workplaces every day. For our employees who face domestic violence, it can shatter their self-esteem, their mental wellness, and their dignity. We know these issues are seen. I've worked in spaces where women wear their shades to hide the bruises on their face, and they share their stories of abuse and fights within our workspace. So this is really important. But on top of it, you had mentioned COVID-19. And we know definitely in this time of this pandemic that domestic violence has increased, because women are now, or victims, I should say, victims of violence are now more at home. They're at home, they're in these spaces that their abusers are there. So if we're doing remote work, it's really important for employees and employers to understand how remote work for COVID-19, how domestic violence impacts that. And so I just wanted to make sure that, we'll talk about that further as we continue to go through this. But thank you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to mention before we move forward, this presentation or this webinar is brought to you and was made possible by the American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. Okay. All right.
Well, one more thing, I just want to make sure that one of the notes that we want to start off with, that according to CDC, 1 in every 4 women and 1 in 10 men will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. For Pacific Islander women or Samoans, that's 2 out of 3 women will have experienced domestic violence. We know that it is here in our community. But unfortunately, studies that are done, 65% of companies do not have a formal workplace domestic violence policy or prevention policy. And that was based on research that was done by the Human Resources Management in the United States. It's important as employees, we develop a workplace culture that focuses on these issues of domestic violence, so employees will not be afraid or embarrassed to talk about these issues, so that HR knows how to handle it, and employers should have policies to deal with the issues in the workplace. So this workshop really is here to begin the dialogue and conversations to help start safe discussions within their work group.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Jennifer.
Yeah.
All right.
No worries.
Okay, sorry. All right, so we're going to have Jennifer lead us through the this
So-
exercise. But before we start, the discussion we're going to have today may cause unwanted memories, challenging emotions, even possibly negative feelings. So if you find yourself in that moment or having feelings of anxiety, we just want to ask that you take some time. You can step away, possibly step away, regroup, and come back to the group. Another option is what we call a butterfly hug. And so Jennifer's going to take us through this, lead us through this exercise called the butterfly hug.
So this is something that has been shared among other coalitions or other virtual groups that I've attended. And it's very simple. And if you find yourself feeling anxiety or anxious based on any of the conversations or the images that we will be showing during this exercise, we really encourage you to, you can practice this exercise, which is a butterfly hug. So you can either sit or stand, but place yourself in a comfortable position. And then we ask you to cross both your arms in front of you. You can either put your arms down by your elbows, or you can go higher up to your chest. And as you start to feel anxious, we ask that you start to tap your hands side by side and incorporate the breathing techniques. So breathing 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3. And you continue to do this butterfly hug, this tapping. Begin the gentle tapping, each hand on your upper arm, one at a time in a repetitive motion. And then as you tap, definitely breathing, and you'll start to feel yourself become less anxious. And when you are less anxious and when you're able to, you can return to the group. Okay. So that's a new technique you can try.
Sorry, I was just trying to control my breathing.
That's
So,
important.
very important. So as Jennifer was saying, this is something you can, if you aren't doing it right now, this is something you can do also as we move throughout the presentation. And if you're having some feelings, and then if you need to step away or do the butterfly hug, please, by all means, please do so. Okay. And if you have any questions about the butterfly hug, please feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can ask us at the end of the of our webinar. I forgot to mention at the beginning that we will be opening up the chat box, our chat room, for any questions or anything that you wanted to share, that you might want to share as we move on throughout the our today's webinar. Okay. All right. So before we move on, we just wanted to go over. It's really important that we have some agreements, some ground rules to ensure that today's discussion, we sail through today's discussion smoothly, and we get to the end of it with the outcomes that we want to, that we will discuss. So these group agreements, first of all, respect each other's opinion, even if we don't agree, even if we don't, even if we disagree. That's very important. It's really important to participate if you can, by all means, but if you feel the need to just listen, it's okay. It's really up to you. Confidentiality, some things shouldn't be repeated outside of the space. Be conscious of our time. This is something that we can both help each other out with as facilitators, as well as the audience. We want to help stick to our time. So whatever sharing we might have throughout the our webinar or this presentation, we make sure that we be mindful of the time. Also, our mobile phones, if you don't mind turning them down a bit to minimize disruptions. We want to make sure that everyone is able to contribute, and only one person speaks at a time, if you don't mind, so that this enables us to hear what everybody else has to share with us, which is very important. We want to make sure we don't miss out any sharings or any questions that anyone might have to ask or share with us. Was there anything else you wanted to add to the group agreements, Jennifer?
No, I think you've got them. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Okay. All right, so this is our goal for today. For today's an hour and a half. This is our goal or the objective of this webinar. What we hope that by the end of 90 minutes, we should be able to learn we should be able to identify what gender-based violence is, how domestic violence affects the workplace, the workers, as well as the work, how to recognize warning signs when domestic violence walks through those doors, tips and tools for managers and employers regarding domestic violence, methods to better respond and assist or support victims, us as employers or us as co-workers. It's important that we understand some methods to better respond and in supporting the person that's sitting across from your desk, or the person that you're teaming up with at work, that works with you. Creating an organizational culture, as well as there will be some available resources for you to look into after today's webinar. So those are some of the objectives that we hope that after 90 minutes, we'll be able to go through those. Did I miss out on anything, Jennifer, in case you wanted to add on to any of that?
No, thank you. Thank you.
All right, okay.
You got it. So I really wanted, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jennifer, go ahead. I was just gonna ask you if you can explain the slide.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. So, gender-based violence, it's a phenomenon that's deeply rooted in gender inequality, and it continues to be one of the notable human rights violations within all societies. So rather than saying violence against women, when we focus on gender-based violence, it provides a construct or image that gender-based violence is violence that's directed against a person because of their gender. So both women and men, they experience gender-based violence, but the majority of victims we know are women and girls. Using the gender-based aspect is important as it highlights the fact that many forms of violence against women are rooted in power inequities or inequalities between women and men. So also gender-based violence does not happen in a vacuum. There's many intersections to that. So we know that gender-based violence, it does not happen when a person is in the wrong place at the wrong time. It can happen, it happens in homes and it happens in families where we're supposed to feel safe, or there are safe territories or sacred territories. It happens by people that we know, from someone who claims to love us or love you. It's often hidden, even from one's closest confidants, friends, or family members. So that's the definition for gender-based violence.
Okay. I just wanted to add on with that slide. I couldn't help but think of, for us locally here in American Samoa, we have so many of the transgender community, such as one of our partners, one of the alliance's partner is SOFIA, Society of Fa'afafines in American Samoa. That's what SOFIA stands for. So I can't help but think of those that are transgender, that with the violence that they're going through, because, like you were saying, because of our gender, and because they're considered transgender, therefore there's a lot of violence that they go through, and as well as not being able to receive those services fully, be provided with those services that any other regular woman or man would receive. So every time the word gender-based violence is mentioned, I always think of because we might think that it's just women and men, but then we tend to forget about the transgender community that is being violated in a lot of areas because of who they are.
And they play such an important role in our families and in our communities.
Yes.
A lot of times they're the caretakers, and a lot of times they're the caretakers of our parents and our nieces and nephews and
the children.
Yeah, the children, they're very important. They hold prominent roles in our community as, you know, leaders in certain areas. So definitely we want to recognize them as part of the gender base,
Yeah.
and recognizing that there is violence that occurs in their safe spaces as well. So thanks for
Mm.
adding that.
So we're moving on, and we've come now to our group discussion. And the purpose of this group discussion is to get a sense of knowledge amongst us participants. And since we don't have a group, and you know, it's we only have a few participating. So what we're going to do is we're going to just ask a few questions, and then if you would like to send us or share with us your reply, then by all means. So one of the questions we have is, how would you define domestic violence? And we have already discussed gender-based violence, the control system, as well as that we had shown in that video. So how would you define domestic violence?
Okay, I've got one person that's listed. It's all about control.
Mm-hmm. It's all about control. That's very good. That's very good. There's a lot of controlling going on in domestic violence. Yes, domestic violence, like in the video we had shown, they were showing the power and control wheel. And some say that domestic violence is all about trying to control. And sometimes it's not easy. We can't control other people, so therefore we have to apply that power or you know, to get people to listen to or do what we want, and sometimes by force.
Somebody also posted, majority of those victimized are women.
That's a good point. Majority of those victimized are women, but we should not forget that also men are victims as well. As a matter of fact, sometimes we say to ourselves, we're all victims of violence. So that means everyone, you know, we're all victimized by one way or the other by something that some of us know of or do not know about. Or sometimes we can be perpetrators. We apply the violence that we don't know of, you know. But facts, statistics show that all genders are being violated, but the majority of those that are being violated, sexual abuse, domestic violence, you name it, are female or are women, unfortunately. Even our transgender community, there's a lot of violence going on there too as well. So, but the numbers are very high, sorry, when it comes to women. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, that was the other question that's in the chat is, how does the power and control happen for Fa'afafines? And I know that, or for the LGBTQ, which I know that you answered a little, we talked a little bit about in the previous slides.
How does it happen for?
But if you want to expand.
How does it happen for the Fa'afafines?
Yeah, how does power and control happen? Yes,
okay,
that's one of the questions here.
Yeah, for my experience, knowing and having friends that are part of the LGBTQ community or that are transgender, violence can, they've experienced violence from family members that don't accept them of who they are. Church sometimes, you know, they sometimes when they go to church, there's a lot of stigma, especially with our here in Samoa, our Fa'afafines, we call them Fa'afafines, the transgender community, and that means to be a woman. So some of them go to church dressed up as women, and in some denominations or some faith base, they have accepted them as who they are, as well as what they wear. In some denominations, they don't, you know, and that can be oppressive to them. That can also be, because there's a lot of backlash. They can, you know, get a lot of things, not so pleasant things said by people that, you know, and as well as family members, So there's a lot of that for the LGBTQ or for the Fa'afafines here in our local setting,
Yeah,
in our community. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
I think if you look at the power and control wheel, I think for the power and control wheel, if you look at that, some of these things like them, when they're not accepted and they're not part of the society, then they're isolated. And they definitely tend to work within their own groups, and their safety group is other Fa'afafines. So it really is a power and control. I mean, and that's more so on a community level, but that's something that needs to also be discussed. But there is one more comment here, and this will be the last comment we'll look at. It states domestic violence isn't just physical, it can be emotionally and mentally.
Absolutely. And that's the hard part about it. I believe that's the hard part, is when it becomes emotional, mental, when people are affected mentally, because those are things that we can't see. We can see the bruises, right? We can see all the other signs, but and that's why this discussion is very important. This webinar is very important, because we're going to be talking about those signs that we'll be able to identify when people are affected emotionally and mentally by violence, and that it is the one that everybody else is seeing this from. Okay, so we're at this, and this is what we know. So we're going to share some of the study, some of the survey results that we were able to collect, and we wanted to share some of this information. So in 2015, a study of 8,429 people, and that's over one third of those reported, they are victims of domestic violence. And we can say that 33% of our employees have experienced domestic violence. It's important to note that when domestic violence happens at home, it doesn't stay at home, especially when victims of violence are people or mothers that work and have to be at work and have to leave the house to earn that income to support the family. And just because we're some of us, whether we're males or females, and if we're breadwinners of our family, that doesn't mean that violence is not going to get to us. Where were we? So participants stated, we bring to work everything that happens at home. In an analysis done across North America, they recorded $77.9 million lost due to domestic violence. That means time off, sick days used, productivity had decreased, as well as the cost to care for victims of violence. That's a lot of money that goes into that. Some of the reports that we might not have included here stated a lot of, and it says here billions. It costs billions of dollars. When domestic violence happens in the workplace, it's important to note they receive abusive phone calls at home, abusive emails that is opened at work, and many abusers will come to the workplace to either harass or stalk their victims. They will also even go as far as contacting coworkers or employers to either complain about the abused, making it difficult for an abused victim to possibly perform in the workplace. They might even call or make up a lot of stories or lies about the victim, things, or just talking bad about the victim to their boss, to their supervisors or employers. Warning signs that your employee is a victim of violence. This is important, and so please be mindful of your wellness here. If you have any feelings, please, or if you're feeling weird or anything, please take care of yourself. All right. So these are indicators to look for when a victim of violence is an employee or staff. You know, remember, domestic violence does not happen in a vacuum. Does not happen in a vacuum. So these are red flag indicators. These are things we need to look out for. There's a possibility that this person, this staff member, or this employee is a victim of violence when they show up late to work, starting to show signs of stress, or they have excessive absences, cannot concentrate at work, they just can't focus. They're inside, they're outside, they're all over the place, they're hardly at their desk or where they need to be found. Receive excessive amount of personal calls. Sometimes, and now since everyone's got a cell phone, you know, now they're no longer, some will tie up the office line, or some will just consistently call you on your cell phone or your cell phone. And then they show signs of decreased productivity. You know, they can't really focus on their work, and you know, they're not doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, or they start wearing long sleeves to work. You know, there are cold days, but when they're, you know, when they wear long sleeves to work, and especially like here in Samoa, where it's humid and people hardly really wear long sleeves, except for when it's really like windy or cold, or, you know. So that can also be an indicator. Repeated discussion of marital relationship problems. They're consistently talking about, you know, these problems that are going on. Or bruises, chronic headaches, abdominal pains, muscle aches. One term that's that might be missing from there, or is important to say, is unexplained. When there are unexplained bruises or headaches, pains or aches that, you know, they don't know what's going on, or even when they come from the doctor's office and they said, you know, even the doctor can't find what's going on with them. The other one is taking frequent time off for illness or to see the doctor. There's a lot of fatigue. And then when there's intense startle reactions, you know, when people are jumpy, or you know, when they're, in Samoan you would say makeke, you know. So yes. when those are just some of the indicators, but there's many more, but these are just some that we've included so that we can keep an eye out for, you know, for our employees, especially, as well as our co-workers. And it's not just the employer's job, but especially us as co-workers, as staff members. These are also things we need to learn of, so that we can also identify what's going on. Because most of the time, the employers or the floor staff are not with their supervisors most of the time. Most of the time when you're working, either you're unsupervised or you're working with co-workers. And those are the people that see a lot of this going on, you know, also see a lot of the phone calls coming in or so. Okay. So Jennifer is going to explain to us, or she is going to take us through Sina's story.
So this is Sina. She's your employee or your staff person. And as the employer, lately you've noticed Sina's not been coming into work. Oftentimes she's been late. You've noticed that she's become more silent. She's not as happy-go-lucky as she used to be. And sometimes she goes into spaces the bathroom, and you know that she's crying. And it's easy for her to become very upset easily. And then as the days go by, you start to notice that she has bruises and she doesn't laugh as much. And your other staff, they tell you that Sina's been receiving a lot of calls from her partner at work. And one day Sina comes into work limping and has cuts or bruises on her arms and her face. Then on Monday, you realize your staff tells you Sina's been in the paper, her husband's been in the paper, and this is the story that's being told. Samo News has listed this. They've arrested, this is the whole case scenario that they do, and they're talking about, now they're expressing what did the abuser do to the victim, and the abuser, and this is what the story is. So Sina was talking to her husband, and whose name is Sefo, and Sefo has an alcohol problem. And the fact that, and she has a problem that he spends a lot of money buying the alcohol for him and his friends, instead of buying food or clothes and the things that the family need. So Sina tells Sefo, if he doesn't stop drinking and save some money for their family, maybe that they would probably, if he would save the money, then the situation would improve rather than what they're doing now. And it said in the newspaper, Sefo makes about $280 biweekly. He spends half of the paycheck on alcohol, and she suspects he's doing drugs, which has been common, right? As they continue to talk, Sefo gets angry and he starts to yell at her and tells her to shut up, be quiet. Sina tries to explain that she just wants him to change, for Sefo to be a loving father for their family. And this angers Sefo, because now she's telling him what to do. And in his anger, Sefo slaps her face. Then pulls Sina's hair and starts to punch her in the face. He continues to punch Sina in the face multiple times. And she has a bruise on her right side of her face. And he continues to grab her hair and drag her from the room to the kitchen. And it even says on the student, Sefo then uses a 9 to 10 inch piece of wood and strikes her on the left side of her head, and it causes some swelling and peeling of the skin. He also gets a broom handle and starts to strike her with it. And he starts hitting Sina and threatening her, and then he leaves the home. And thankfully, one of the children there with Sina calls the police. And this is now they've arrested the husband, and that's how the story becomes posted in the newspaper. And now everybody knows Sina's story because it's a small island, it's Samo News. Yes. So what do we do with that?
All right. So that was Sina's story. We're going to move on to the next slide, but keep in mind Sina's story, because we're going to come back and we're going to talk some more about Sina's story. So this is our next session. You are Sina's employer, co-worker. What would you do? What would you do? And so the first question would be, have they worked with any victims? Now that we know the signs, now that you know the signs, now that you know the signs of violence, can you think back and would you be able to recall a time when you worked with that victim, and what was done for the victim?
I have a response, Judy.
Go ahead. Yes.
Well, on the chat box, one person said, I'm not sure what I would do, but I know in the office we would share it among each other.
I know the story ended with Sefo being taken away, and it's now in the paper. And realistically, locally, the paper's issue comes out late. It'll be on Facebook. We would find out from Facebook within an hour or so, or and even an hour could be too late. But
yeah.
And Sina might not come to work on the next morning, right?
Correct.
Correct. And we're there. I mean, the rest of the staff is there, or her co-workers are there, and they're talking about what's going on with Sina. So of course, yes, that definitely will be. There will be sharing. There will be talk, but I hope it's. I like how they said. There will be sharing amongst the staff members, and because that's different from gossip, And that's
Yeah.
and I like that. I like that how we they come and they share, because this is when we I believe that sharing is when we come up with ideas on how we can help people, because that's when how we can help this coworker that's going through this issue. Um, this is this is also good because there might be someone else in the office or another staff member that was going through something but has never shared her story because she's been really good at hiding her issue. So this is also something that can trigger one to share their story as well as a victim. So
Yeah.
so it's really good
There,
because go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say there's another chat question here.
Okay, sure.
They're not sure if their office has an office policy on violence, on domestic violence. So they're not quite sure what to do.
Okay, and if so, and this is something that an employer or someone in management level would probably know of. So, and if they don't, this is something to look at, for future, because most likely the business or the organization agency, it will expand, and so they want to make sure that there are these policies or guidelines that can protect staff members, especially female staff members,
Yeah.
as well as male staff members for that matter, as they move forward. Um, do you have any stories you would like to? Are there any other chats? I mean, comments in your chat box there, Jennifer? Before I was just going to ask you if you had ever experienced this, and if you had a story you'd like to share about um, seeing, because I know you've been a manager of some places in the past, elsewhere aside from here at the Alliance. So have
Yeah.
were you ever so unfortunate to have experienced something like this?
Unfortunately, I have to say yes. I've been a manager for victims of violence over the years, particularly I've had in the places that I worked were predominantly women. And they so it was not uncommon for them, for particular women to come into the office wearing their shades, having bruises on their faces, or being not being that boisterous woman that they
Yeah.
were, but that you see the changes in their personality. So all those red danger signs, they're absolutely true, and it did create some issues as far as productivity. So yes,
Yeah.
it has an impact on their ability to work and the work that they do, being productive. So, and it can be disruptive for the group because as they're sharing, sometimes there are those that can be insensitive to the needs of that individual, of Sina. And then there are those who really want to help Sina but don't know what to do. So it's been very the lens in which we see violence, it can change. And if we're not familiar with signs or understanding what role we can play and what we can say and what we can do, then sometimes it can be much more harmful to the victim. And we want to make sure that we're not harming anybody.
Yes, absolutely. And as I was saying, as females, although there's a great number of females that are victims of violence and come to work still, there are also men that come to work that are victims of violence. I also used to work in a place where the majority of workers were men, and they would. I worked with someone whose spouse would come to the office and not spy or stalk him, but when she came to the office and she didn't like, seeing anything, him talking to innocently talking to someone else, another woman, she would attack him in front of everyone in public, or at work for that matter. So it got to the point where he had, sometimes he would come to work with scratches on his face, and that was physical evidence. Um, um, she would also, he would also miss a lot of work, miss out on a lot of work. He would take leave that he didn't have. And he would take long lunches, because he had to deal with some of the issues and some of that stuff. So those are some of the things that, and the company had to make sure that, because it happened more than once, so the company had to make sure that that the staff members were safe, because
Mhm.
and so there was security. They kind of like boosted up security,
Yeah.
there was security in that area where people would come in so that nobody could attack the employees, because although he was a husband, a father, but when he came to work, he was an employee of that company, and that company was, responsible for his well-being as well as his safety. And so anything could have happened to him at work, and the company would have,
Yeah.
it would have been, it would have cost the company some
Yeah.
money if so. Those kind of things.
Yeah. Those are really, these are very important stories, because definitely where I was working as managing, and for one of the stories that I had, which is different from I said, the first one was that the abusers started to come to the workplace and would sit in our office space and would watch her as she was working and would not leave the space at all. So it was like he was stalking her, right? And everybody in the office, they accepted the fact that he would just sit there in the corner. So when she would come with bruises, and I would take her to the side, and I would say to her, "Is it okay for him to be here with her?" And she didn't want that. She didn't want him in the workspace. So I went to HR and I asked HR, "What do I do with this situation?" And they said, well, there was no policy for domestic violence, but they did say that they would have security come into our office. And this office was the place where everybody came to pay bills. And so there was a lot of coming in and out in our office space. And so, security did that for the first week, and he started to come less and less and less. He then started to sit outside of the office space, right? He was still on the grounds,
Yeah.
but he was outside of the office space. So it was very distracting. It not only was it distracting for her, but it was extremely distracting for the other coworkers, because they didn't know what he would do to them. But more importantly, I think it really did less. Now everybody knew what was going on in her life because he was there. So any business that they would have wanted privately, or to resolve it in a private setting, it wasn't done that way, because he made sure to be there stalking her. So it definitely, you really start to realize, what is it that I can do as an employer to protect not only your staff that's being abused, but the staff that are around you, and what's in place right now for policies that ensure that this happens. And then what do you do after, if the victim decides to be outside of that space with her husband, or decides to leave that situation? How then do you get them the assistance? And really, how far do I go as an employer or a supervisor to help?
Yes.
What's my role in this? Because I don't want to harm myself.
Yes.
I don't want to bring
Absolutely.
problems. I don't want to bring problems back to myself. So there's a lot of things you have to really think about when you're dealing with Sina and her story, right? You have to unpack all of this, and then come back to a place where you can really figure out what is the best way to approach this in my safe space, in my workspace, that will provide safety for everybody.
Yeah. And as a coworker, I just wanted to say, because I too just doing this work now, but I've worked a lot in the private sector too in my past. And one thing I've learned is that in any company, and I think this is across the board, is that, and many business owners as well as managers, company owners, or say the same thing. The most important thing in their businesses are their workers.
Yes.
That is their most important asset. So, and I realized today it's different from 20 years ago. 20 years ago, when I first started working, I was told, and this was to be professional, and professional meant you leave your problems at the door. You don't walk into the door with those problems, or, you cannot cry because once you walk through that door, you're on the clock, But today it has a lot to do with our wellness, we realize that, our employees can be more productive when we help them, because they might not be getting any kind of support or any kind of help from home.
Correct.
So
Yes.
we too at work can be, responders as well.Maybe not first responders, but we can be advocates or supporters for our employees to make them, especially if that victim turns up Sina, especially if Sina is a reliable person at work, and you just can't see Sina being replaced anytime soon, because she's very much needed. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just find out that Sina is being abused. Sina is a victim, and she might come in and want some time off. And what do you do as an employee? As an employers, to support your employee or your staff member. So, all right.
Good discussion.
Good discussion. Good stuff. Okay, moving to the next one. All right. So here we have why I'm hesitant, or here are some reasons, points of concern, as well as points to consider of why we might be hesitant, or why we might feel the need to not react, to support our coworkers, or any victim of violence for that matter, especially those that we work with or work under us. So, points of concern. First one here, it's none of my business. And this is normal. These points of concern, this is what people would say, what we normally would say. And then points to consider, it could be a matter of life or death. Violence is everyone's business. It is our business to help. It doesn't, especially when it's anyone. And that because we have this tendency to help, we have this tendency to not want to help strangers. Oh, I don't know this person. I don't, she might be a drug addict. They might be going through all of this. I don't know this person. I don't know their story. And we only feel that it's only safe to help someone who we're related to, or someone we know, or a good friend. And so when we say it's none of our business, we really don't know, and it could be a matter of life or death. The other point of concern here is I don't know what to say. That's normal. That's normal. Most of the time we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do, right? Saying you care and are concerned is a good start. Saying you care and you're concerned is a good start. And sometimes, we don't have to say anything. Sometimes our presence is important, I might make things worse. Your concern might be that you might make things worse. Well, consider that doing nothing is more likely to make things worse. Doing nothing is more likely to make things worse. Another concern that we might have is, I'm worried his violence will turn to me and threaten the safety of the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, consider that we should let the police know if he received threats. We should let the police know if we receive threats. Our safety is very important. Our safety is very
Yes.
important. And as responders, first responders, advocates, supporters, we always need to look out for our safety first, our safety, because we are of no use to the victim. We are of no use to the situation if we're not safe, if if we get injured first, because it's just like taking care of ourselves so that we can continue to care for others. So we need to make sure that in any event, in any case, your safety is first. Your safety is first, before we can help or support anyone. So if you see that the situation is escalating and it's not safe, there's threats and flying around the place, connect with the police. Let the police know, and they can help you out. Are there any other point of concerns that you can think of, Jennifer, you might want to add?
No, we're good. We're
All
good.
right. Okay.
I'm just checking the chat box. I don't see any questions. We're good.
All right. Okay. And so we've come to these are some things we can things to say to care and help and support and encourage our victims of violence. And we always say that we're all victims of violence, or we know someone who's a victim of violence. So it's very important that that we do our part as a friend to support, or as a family member to support, and show that we care. So here's just a few things we can say. We can be supportive. Things that we can be supportive by what we say. Show our support by listening carefully. Express understanding, that we understand what they're going through, and not blame them, or you shouldn't have been there. I told you not to go there. No, we need to express that we understand. Tell the employee it is not their fault. It's never the victim's fault. We need to validate whatever it is that these victims or your staff or employees are feeling. So if they come to you and say, well, I'm so sad, that it's okay to be sad. We have to validate their feelings. So, and we want to make sure that they trust us to be able to come back and share with us, or share with us anything else that might happen to them in the future. So these are just some ways, some things we can say to express or show our care, our support, and how we can advocate and help those who are affected by violence.
Can I add something else as well? Just definitely adding to this, because of the slide before where we're hesitant. So some of the, if you're hesitant not to know exactly what to say, we definitely can express our sorrow if they're hurting. So saying, I see that you're hurting, and I believe that something's not right. Can I help you? Or I'm worried about you. I've seen sometimes that you come in, you're crying or you're hurt. I really want to see how I can help, and what can I do? Or if you do see the bruises, and then you can say to them, nobody deserves to be treated that way. You don't deserve to be treated. How can I help you? How can I help you to feel safe? So those are other things to say as well.
Yeah, as well as listen carefully. It's very important. That's one of the important ones. Listen carefully, because victims can tell when we're not listening. When we're just sitting there and hurry up. I need to get over. What is it that you want to tell me so I can move on with my day? Victims can tell. That's such a big turnoff for victims. Victims can easily just withdraw and not share anything at all. But it's very important that we listen carefully, and we don't have to say anything when we're listening. And that goes to show that you're really listening when you're not saying something and you're taking all of this in. But it's very important. Listening carefully. It's very important, because and when we listen, sometimes when we listen, it's important that we ask the right questions, and not ask
Yes.
those kind of questions like that make us sound like we're gossiping, or we want to know the scoop, or we want to know the whole story. Most of our questions should be of concern, like how are you doing, like Jennifer was saying earlier. I'm worried about your safety. Is there anything you would like to share with me? As a supervisor, because some supervisors can come off really aggressive, and and to the point where employees or staff might not want to share. But the main objective here, the main goal is to get them to be able to share what's going on with them, so that we can be able to support them with what they need.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this slide is talking about, this is really important. Like we were saying earlier, we were talking about being safe, feeling safe. Assess the situation, find out if the victim is safe, identify is there a threat to children, refer to domestic violence advocate. And we can give you some of, we have some of that information or resources available towards the end of this presentation, so that you'll be able to connect with some of those local advocates and document your meeting. Very important to sometimes document what's going on. It's very important, especially if you're going through this journey and you're going to be getting some of these agencies and you're reaching out to an advocate. You might even get the legal system, involved. And it's very important that you document things that are happening around you on this date, because you want to make sure that you have all this information available. And now, as an employer, it's also important that we document. And I know every employer has a file for each staff member. So if you're meeting with a staff member, it's really important that you want to document that and put it in your file, because you too can, that's a way of supporting this victim. If things get legal, like if they go to court, you can support them with those saying that, how she used to come to work with signs of being abused. And so it's very important that we focus on safety. Safety is key. Safety is key.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So now we're at our next session where, I know it says here breakout session, but we'll call it now discussion session. So this is when we're going to talk about Sina's case again. What would you say to Sina now after the couple of slides that we went over? What do you think you would be able to say to Sina now?
Not to be hesitant, but asking Sina, how can they help, or how can I help, and is she safe?
Very good. I like that one. I like that one. And I like how they start saying not to be hesitant, because sometimes that's what stops us from asking how are you, because we're like, oh, okay, I don't know, she might not be feeling it, or she might not be feeling okay. And someone will say, oh, Sita Valia, there's no stupid question. There's no all questions.
Well,
good question.
And definitely we talk about these brave spaces just as much as these safe spaces. So when you're in your work area, and everybody has a right to a safe working environment, right? I think that's one of the things that we want to make sure happens. And so part of that is being brave enough to ask your coworkers when you see that they're in some pain, or that something's just not quite right about them. And these are people, this is your work family now, you probably spend more time with them than you do with your children, right? You're probably 8 hours a day with this person.
Absolutely.
So being brave enough to say, hey, what did they say? Asking Sina, are you safe?
Yeah.
Don't be hesitant, Yeah, that's bravery in your workspace that needs to happen. So That's a good one. There's a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
Finding out from my supervisor, sorry, my thing keeps going off here. Finding out from my supervisor or my employee, what current policies are there in place at, in our office for domestic violence?
That's a good one. That's a good one because Sina's story should and if the other coworkers are smart, they would use Sina's story should be kind of like a trigger for everyone to look into that, and not because of just Sina, but everybody should be thinking of themselves like, oh, well, what if this happens to me? Does this office have any rules or,
Yeah.
but for Sina's case, yes, that'll be excellent to be able to discover together with Sina.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that.
With this
So
agency.
the last one that we'll take for now, so we can continue to be on time, is
yeah,
it's saying finding out where would you send Sina? So I think that comes from the Feeling Safe, where it says refer to domestic violence advocates, right? The last slide.
Yeah.
So where would you send Sina, and what do we know?
It's also important for I think it's also important for the employers to connect and to have on hand numbers of those that the local advocates or agencies that deal with these issues, because I think when anything happens in any case, everyone just calls the police. Anyone just calls the police. But then Sina might not want, like there could be that Sina that comes to work as a victim and she explains, because we just so happen to see what's going on with her. We pull her aside, we're talking to her, but she doesn't want the police involved.
Which happens a lot.
So it's very common, very common. So it's important that we know where to reach out to, and make sure, I would suggest not send Sina but as an employer, connect with the advocate, because some of these victims, it's really up to the victim, but some of these victims are in the state of mind that they are, depending on how extreme things are, they don't have the mindset to go out and look for other resources, but as I think, yeah, and many victims are not familiar with these with where to find support because of our community being a small community. We don't want to be seen as people that that are being beaten up. Now the entire village is going to know that I'm being beaten up by my husband. But as a good employer, I think you can get that information. You can be that support by taking that employee there if they choose to go there, if they choose to, or just make that connection and make that meeting with, hook up that meeting with an advocate. So we'll get to the last slide. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I think definitely what you've been saying is like the asking Sina. It's really, really important that we need to understand that, yes, we may want Sina to call the police immediately and we want, see this person arrested, but we have to remember this is now Sina's husband. This is Sina's husband who probably participates or puts in, well, he's the one who pays bills as well. Yeah. And so when you put Cepho in a institution such as jail, he most likely is not going to be able to contribute to the financial success of the family. And so it's really, really important that what we think needs to happen, we need to always remember to go back and ask Sina, what is it that you would like to do? And then on top of that is not only asking her, but accepting what she wants. Accepting it is important. And
because, and I just wanted to jump on that while you're saying that, because most of us find it very hard to accept that victims of violence go back to the scene, want to return to the scene of the crime. They say nobody knows violence better than a victim of violence. And when it does happen again and they come back, that's the tough part for us, because a lot of us cannot accept them when they come back with the same issue.
Yeah,
Thank you for that discussion. Now we're moving on to, and we're keeping in mind that we have 10 more minutes or,
yes.
yes, of this webinar. So here's a slide where it says, when an employer is aware. So these are in hopes what an employer should do or, consider to do if they know or they understand that something's going on with one of their employees, or understands that they're being violated or they're a victim of violence. Employers should take every precaution, make sure that everything that person is safe at work, just like what Jennifer was talking about, how in the past there was one person who would come to the office and, that's taking precaution of, well, I see that as taking precaution that that nobody in that area gets hurt. And like Jennifer was saying, not only was it uncomfortable, but it was also uncomfortable for other employees, other staff members. Do not ignore the situation. Express your concern about things affecting work. And when the employee does not disclose abuse. Did you want to elaborate some more on those points, Jennifer? When an
So
employer is
definitely,
aware?
well, I want to touch on the last part. There are many times when an abuser does not want to share what's happening, but we can see the signs. We see those signs of indicators that they're coming to work late, they're not productive, there's times where there's icky, like you said, where that motion of being startled at any time. And we can see those signs, but we see that the employee does not disclose the abuse. But I would encourage employers and supervisors that when they see that, ask the question, and ask the question in a way that states, look, I've noticed that there's some changes in the way that you're producing. Is there something going on at home? Is there something that you would like to share? Because you want to make sure that you definitely record that, right?
And again,
Because if anything happens to the person at the workplace, you want to make sure that you try to identify it, and hopefully that the person abused will start to open up, and you can then get them the assistance that they need.
yes, and again, document everything that you're doing, or document your meetings or discussions. Very important.
Yes.
And so we've moved on to what can employers and employees do as we move on. Start the conversation. Form a group, committee, or task force. Create or utilize a survey for your workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some things, a few things that employers, workplaces, as well as their staff members, employees can start to do, like we were discussing in the past. Start that conversation, on how to help, how to support this person. Form a group, committee, or task force. Create or utilize a survey for your workforce. And this is bringing in, building up to making what, policies, right, Jennifer?
Yes.
That kind of stuff. So form a group, committee, or task force to work on these issues. Get everybody involved. Get everybody involved, because just because it might be happening to one person now, just because we only see it happening to Sina, but it will benefit everybody else. And so was there anything else you wanted to add to that
No, I think
employers and
it's good.
employees can do?
I think definitely starting a survey within their own workspaces is a great thing, because then you can identify how many people may be a victim of domestic or sexual abuse or violence. So yeah, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. All right. What can employers do? Connect employees with domestic violence services, including counseling. Make those connections like I was talking about earlier. Create policies and procedures.
Mm.
Create partnerships with local shelters. Create those partnerships with local advocates, local agencies, government agencies, you know. Creating those policies and procedures, it's really important that you have those there because, and not only are we, not only will you most likely be employing or staffing a victim, you most likely will be doing the same thing for perpetrators. You might be staffing or employing someone who is also abusing their spouse that you don't know of. So it's really important that these policies and procedures come in so that if these people are still continuing to do that and very good at hiding it, you know, you wouldn't even know that Joe is abusing his wife. Joe, the head of, you know, marketing is abusing his wife. These policies and procedures can make Joe think twice about continuing to work, especially if this position or this job means everything to Joe. So not only does it work for victims, you know, it can also work for perpetrators in a sense where, you know, they will think twice about bringing that kind of being that kind of a person, that perpetrator, and continuing to work for this agency. So was there anything you wanted to add on there, Jennifer?
No, not right now. No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. So policies. So if in case your agency or your business, your workplace, in case they don't have a policy, you know, that can work for victims of violence, for everyone, well, here's a way in getting there. Create a process to develop a domestic violence policy with key stakeholders. Get those key stakeholders in, board of directors, anyone, those partners in, to start that discussion. Identify responsibility, identify the responsibility, everyone's responsibility. Key pieces of the policy, very important. Develop procedures. Distribute the policy. That's very important. You don't create the policies and then put it and lock it away and safe. Everybody needs to know. When you have those staff meetings, when you have whenever orientation, everybody needs to go through this and understand this is what this agency or this company, this business stands for. So very important that we distribute that policy. Provide the training, very important. This is training. This is training for everyone. Build awareness in the workplace. Thank you to those agencies. This is also a good time to do a shout out to all these local agencies, companies, or businesses we see are bringing awareness into their workplaces. Thank you for doing that for your staff, and create accountability. If you do not have a domestic violence policy, workplace policy, please feel free to call the Alliance. Our phone number is 684-699-0272, or connect with us on our Facebook page, which is the American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And we will happily, gladly work with you to help you with in creating those policies for your agency.
The other thing is we want to give out our email for the Alliance, which is
asadsv@gmail.com. That's asadsv@gmail.com. Our website is also, you can find the Alliance at www.asalliance.co. That's our website. For more information, and on our website, you'll be able to see everything, a lot of the work that we do. Was there anything you wanted to add on to this, Jennifer?
Well, you know what I'd like to just offer too, Judy?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, we hadn't even talked about this, but we can do another webinar on how to create the policy.
Yeah. We
can do that.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that that's very important, because I think a lot of people think that it might be a hard, only only the legal mind, the counselors can go through it. But this is something that we can all, sit through.
Oh,
It,
yeah,
yeah. All right. So
yeah.
some additional tools. I'm sorry, I didn't get the link there for the video. Not to worry, we will put that up on our Facebook page when we put out the notice for this today's webinar. But these are some of the additional tools, the links where you can go to in order for you to get more information about model domestic violence abuse policy, workplace response. Supervisors can make a difference. These are some of the links that you can go to in order for you to be able to provide that support. Or please do not hesitate to connect with us here at the Alliance with the contact information that we had just given you, and we'll work with you with any questions you might have on this. Was there any other tool that you wanted to add on there, Jennifer?
No, I think that what we'll do too, when it goes up on Facebook or the YouTube, we'll also add additional links.
Sure. Okay. We are at the conclusion of our webinar, of today's webinar. So we wanted to list here some of our local advocates or first responders for you to connect as employers. Please, you're able to connect with the Department of Human Social Services. That's their phone number. You can call and they're at Utule, or call 911 for emergency, Department of Public Safety or the police department. That's their number, located at Whangatongo, the substation at Tafuna. You can call, connect with them for assistance. Our hospital, our local hospital at Whangaalu, that's the number. And as well as here in Tafuna, Tafuna Health Family Healthcare, that's their number right there. We also have some of our nonprofit organizations, like the American Samoa Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. They're here at Lions Park, Tolu Street in Tafuna. Their executive director is Mrs. Matautia Liumailo. We also have the American Samoa Legal Aid, located in Pangopango, with the executive director, Whainu Lele, like Lima Utu. Or Back on Track, located at Manave on this on the other side of the island. We have with their director Mona Oli. That's Mona's contact number. For Mona is an advocate, and we
think
also
we have to update that number too.
Yes, as well as Catholic Social Services. Catholic Social Services is located, that's their number, as well as they're located at Fatuainga here at Tafuna. They're actually in the Fatuainga compound, in case someone's wondering where they are. Their offices at within the Fatuainga compound here in Tafuna. And there are so many other local advocates and supporters of victims of violence that we have not listed here. I just want to mention one of them also is Mana Health Community. And the advocate or the person that runs Mana Health Community is Elizabeth Mailo. Liz, you can find more information on how to connect with Liz if you connect with the Alliance. We apologize for not putting Liz's information up there. These are some of the information that, some of the agencies that we can connect with for some services in order to provide for our staff members who are victims of violence. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to connect with the Alliance here at 684-699-0272. That is our local number. Or you can send us an email at asadsv@gmail.com. Please follow the Alliance on its Facebook page, and you can find that at American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And you can also view our the work that we're doing and all the programs of the Alliance on our website, which is www.asalliance.co. Is there any other connection that or contact info that you wanted to put out there, Jennifer? I might have missed out on.
I can't think of anything. I think that's. We'll add on the Mana Health. We'll add on to that.
Yes.
Those that are not listed based on what you have said. But I do want to end, well, as we're getting close to the end, right?
Yes, go ahead.
I want to make sure one of the chat box did say, the chat response was they would like to see the webinar for developing policies.
Mhm.
So there's been a couple of interests in the chat box on that. So we'll definitely create that.
Yes, and we'll definitely put out the word. Keep an eye on our Facebook page, and we'll put out the word when that webinar will be aired,
Okay.
and when we're going live, when we're going to be facilitating that webinar. We will definitely be doing it because it's being requested. And now is not the first time it was requested. It was also requested some time ago, but there's been so many things going on. But we're definitely going to be doing that webinar, and we will definitely be putting out the word. So please keep an eye out on our Facebook page. Was there anything you wanted to add on before we?
No, I really enjoyed this. This is my first time doing this, so I enjoyed it. I was a little scared, but I was a little skeptical, but I found my virtual background.
I know. Oh my gosh.
So it was pretty painless. When you're standing in front of people, it can get a little daunting, but
But thank
this
you.
is good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
you
for
made it easy.
Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for this. And I just wanted to put it out there. Jennifer and I were co-hosting this webinar today, but Jennifer had created this this PowerPoint for us to go over because this is one of our tools. So, and this is the work of the Alliance. So thank you, Jennifer, for supporting us today with the webinar. And this is the conclusion of today's webinar. We want to thank each and every one of you that have tuned in or have taken the time out to sit in on this webinar today. We just wanted to also mention that this webinar will be made available today, later on today, on our YouTube channel, the American Samoa Alliance Against Domestic and Sexual Violence channel, or you can also go to our Facebook page, click on that link, and it'll automatically take you to this to the webinar where you can view it over and over again. So thank you for tuning in, and please tune in to our future webinars. And like we said, if you have any questions or comments or anything you would like to share about today's webinar, please connect with us. Thank you again, and we hope to see you in the near future. And please be safe. Thank you.